Who's ready for my top 10 books of the year so far? Well, hopefully you are, because that's what we're talking about today. So let's get into it right now. The first one in the number 10 spot is Hunted by Darcy Coates. If you've been around the channel, you know I'm a big fan of Darcy Coates. Hunted, it takes place in the woods, and I'm a big fan of stories that take place out in the woods. The woods are creepy, there's weird stuff out there. It was a pretty wild and intense story, and it's about this girl who goes missing, and then her camera shows up, and they find it, and on it there's these like weird photos of what looks like maybe was some sort of entity out there in the woods. And so her friends take it on themselves to like go out there and try to find her. Scary stuff starts happening, and someone or something, maybe a creature, starts pursuing the friends, and who ends up surviving? Do they ever find her? Is she dead? I don't know. You'll have to read the book to find out. And it was freaking awesome. I really loved it. I like horror in the woods. Horror in the woods and like horror underwater. I guess I'm very elemental about my my horror. All right, so after that one, in the number 9 spot is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. I've now read several of T. Kingfisher's books, and they do fantasy and they also do horror and like dark fantasy, and I've really enjoyed what I've read so far, but this one is honestly probably my favorite I've read so far. It's so freaking weird. There's this girl, and she is a, dang it, I can't think of the word. It's like an ethno-archaeologist. She studies bugs from archaeology sites, like fossilized insects, trying to learn about like the insects of the time frame and different dig sites and whatnot. So she does that, and I think I'm saying the word wrong, so sorry about that. She had sublet her apartment, and she ends up going to stay with her mom, and her brother's like, dude, something is not, dude. He didn't say dude. He's like, something is not right with mom. Something is freaking weird. And when she gets there, yeah, her mom's acting all weird. Like, her mom used to be this vibrant, vivacious woman and had like, the house was painted all these crazy colors, and now it's like eggshell. Everything is dull. And then when they talk about the grandma, which was like her mom and her grandmother, she refuses to talk bad about her. And then like the neighbor down the road has a tree where all these vultures roost, and there's just like vultures all over the neighborhood, and one just hangs out on the mailbox, and the neighbor across the street thinks the government's after everyone, and he's kind of crazy. And how the house ends up being haunted is freaking super weird, and it's super wild and creepy and just out there, and I loved it. It was such a good haunted house story. I have a standalone review for that, so I will link that down below as well. I believe most of the books I'm talking about today, I think almost all of them I have standalone reviews for. So I'll link those down below, and if you're interested in any of those books too, I will have those you can check out. Those are affiliate links, which is a great way to support the channel and to support indie bookstores. So the next book is Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, and this is a short little novella. It's kind of like a weird occultish with a Sherlock Holmes vibe, and it's queer, and it's a love story, and it's weird, and it's awesome. It's sadly beautiful, and it's trying to find out about these murders that happened, and there's these weird like symbols that are found at the crime scene, and I don't want to say too much to give it away because it's very short. So the next one is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. And this is the book about a woman named Tova who is older, and she works at this aquarium. There's this other guy who ends up coming through town that's younger that ends up working there as well. And then there's this octopus named Marcellus. And Tova forms a strange and beautiful friendship with this octopus, and it's kind of like she's getting older and she's all by herself, and her son had died and disappeared when he was like, I think 18. There's this whole mystery, and somehow the octopus has some knowledge of this and tries to communicate to her about what happened and what's going on, and there's some strange connection with this guy that ends up working at the aquarium. I can't remember his name off the top of my head right now, but he comes to town because he's looking for his dad. He thinks his dad's like this rich real estate developer, which it might be, and so he's not so sure, but he gets a job working there in the interim, and him and Tova also like form this friendship, and it's just such a beautiful story, and it was so like heartfelt and emotional. I love stories that have like a water element to it, and I think octopuses are such fascinating creatures, and the friendship of Marcellus with Tobo is just really beautiful, and it's just a really beautiful and fantastic book. I highly recommend it. I mean, I highly recommend all of these. They're all really great. That's why they're on this list. Top 10, baby. So the next one is The House Witch by Delamahack. This book, written by an indie author, it's cozy fantasy, and this house witch ends up coming to this like castle and working for these people, and he doesn't want anyone to know he's a witch. He just wants to make awesome food and keep his head under the radar, work and do his thing. And then of course things never go as planned. Somebody finds out that he might just be a witch, and then stuff spirals from there, and it's cute and it's funny and it's oh so cozy and rosy. And there's 2 more books in the series that I haven't read yet that I still need to get. I mean, come on, we have so many books on our freaking TBRs. There's so many. I need to get to those at some point. I really like that book a lot. I'm all about the cozy fantasy. I can't wait for Travis Baldry's new one to come out. Bookshops and Bone Dust. That comes out in November. So the next one is The Vile Thing We Created by Robert Ottone. It's about this couple, and they're kind of hip and cool. It's Ian and Lola. He's a teacher. She's a baker. All their friends are having kids, and they're leaving them out, and they feel kind of like bummed out because no one invites them to anything anymore because they don't have kids, and they kind of think like, well, they don't want to hang out because, you know, they don't want to be around us and our kids. So they start talking about seriously thinking, should we have a kid? Should we do this thing? And then so they decide to get pregnant, and what ensues is a very difficult pregnancy and weird stuff and seeing weird visions, and then all of a sudden, like, is this child like kind of possessed? He's giving off these weird fiendish vibes, and he's real strange, and there's like occult stuff going on, and it's freaking weird and wild, and it was absolutely awesome. After that one, I'm kind of tying 2 into one here because it's a duology, and it is a Psalm for the Wild Built and also a Prayer for the Crown Shy by Becky Chambers. These 2 novellas were absolutely beautiful. It follows this tea monk and this robot named Mosscap. The first book is them meeting each other and then kind of going on this journey, and it's like about, you know, finding your inner strength and what you want to do and your purpose, and it's very beautiful and sad and heartfelt and just very moving. And then the second book kind of continues on with their journey as they go back to the town and they talk to people, and Mosscap is just this beautiful character. It's this robot, and he experiences the world with childlike joy. Like, everything is new and exciting, and it's just such a freaking feel-good, beautiful book, and I couldn't say one without the other because I read both of them this year. I like the second one just as much as the first one, so I'm actually saying 11 books, but I kind of tied those into one, so I guess it's my top 11 books. I falsely labeled this video top 10, but I had to put those 2 together because I read them the same year. Alright, so we're getting into the top 3 now, which if you've seen a couple of my other videos, I've already mentioned what my top 3 are, so you might already know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But here we go. Number 3 is Lone Women by Victor LaValle. I had no idea I was gonna love this book so much. It's a Western. It's about this character, Adelaide Henry. She ends up going out to Montana because the US is giving out parcels of land that if you can tame it after 3 years, it's yours to keep. They're giving it to women. It can be women by themselves. They don't even have to have a family with them. Different races. So this is a big opportunity, especially it was like in the early 1900s when, you know, stuff is still crappy today, but it was way crappier then. And so she gets out of town because she was in California and some bad stuff happened. She has this big steamer trunk. Within it, when it opens, people disappear. So some bad stuff happened in California where she had to get the heck out of Dodge and like go start a new life and just start over. And so she goes to Montana, and it's a story of what happens and learning to rely on the people that she meets, because your closest neighbor is like 9 miles away and there's strange things out there. What is in the trunk? Is that going to cause problems in the new area she's at? And what will happen? And can she harness what is in the trunk? What is it? I don't know. And it was such a good story. It's horror, it's gory, it's heartfelt, it is emotional, and the characters are really fantastically written. Some of the townsfolk who turn out to be kind of horrible, and then, you know, like, who can you really rely on? Who are your real friends? And just your found family that you find in this place. And a really fantastic book. Number 2, Looking Glass Sound by Catriona Ward. That book comes out in August. It was so freaking good. It follows the story of Wilder Harlow. He's kind of this nerdy kid, doesn't really have any friends, but then his family ends up inheriting this cottage from his uncle who passes away, and he meets these 2 friends, Nathaniel and Harper. They become really close, and he forms this friendship with them. And at the same time, there's also this like weird serial killer that's been going around in that area called the Dagger Man of Whistler Bay. And it's the story of that and what happened with the friends as well. Later in life, Wilder goes on to college and he meets this person named Sky, and he kind of tells Sky like all the stuff that happened with what was going on there and with the stuff with the serial killer, and that's this Sky person kind of goes and steals the story and publishes it. And so this doesn't go over well with Wilder, like, because he thought they had a really great friendship, and this person just kind of totally screwed them over. At some point, he decides to go back to Whistler Bay and like write the story in the right way, you know, set the record straight. As he goes to do that, he starts finding like notes scattered around the cottage in Sky's signature green ink, and like starts to think he's going kind of crazy. It's a book within a book, and then gonna be another book. It's wild and twisty as always, as Catriona Ward is, and it was such a great freaking story about the different friendships and growing up and what happened, and I loved it. Catriona Ward is one of my favorite authors, and this book is possibly my favorite of hers out of all of them so far. So loved it. And the number 1 book is, which I feel like I've said this now in a bunch of videos, so a lot of you who've been around know, you're like, I know what it is. It's Boys in the Valley by Philip Fracassi. And you are correct, because it is. That book is awesome. I loved it. I love Philip Fracassi. This is my favorite of his yet. It's about this orphanage in the 1800s, and there's this group of boys there, and there's these 3 priests that run it. The boys are from really young up until about 17, 18, and one night this man is brought to the orphanage on a dark and stormy night, and he ends up dying there, and then demons are unleashed and all hell breaks loose. I've talked about this book so much, I'm not gonna say 9 million things about it, but it's amazing. I freaking love it. Definitely check it out. This is out July 11th of this year. So a lot of really awesome books this year, and I can't wait to see what we come across in the second half of the year. So if you're a fan of videos where I talk about multiple books that I have read or am reading, the next video coming up will be about that. So stick around, check it out. And if you had fun hanging out today, hit that subscribe button, come back, see me again, and we'll talk about more bookish things and weird stuff.